I still remember the moment I first laid eyes on the demon mask of No, a striking, antique mask whose features seemed to shift in the half-light of an old Kyoto theater, and how that encounter unraveled the fabric of my reality, dragging me into a vortex of ancient curses and spectral vengeance that I never could have imagined. I had been researching traditional Japanese theater for my YouTube channel, eager to explore the lore behind No masks and the rituals they inspired, when I received a mysterious tip about a rare mask said to be cursed by a vengeful spirit of a betrayed woman, doomed to roam the realms between life and death. Intrigued and compelled by an almost irresistible curiosity, I journeyed to a remote part of Japan where, hidden away in a decaying temple near a mist-shrouded forest, the mask was said to be preserved in an old, abandoned No theater. As I stepped into the silent building, the air thick with the scent of incense long burned out and ancient with rotting under layers of dust, I felt an inexplicable chill that set my heart racing, a premonition that I was about to cross a threshold into something far darker than mere folklore. In the dim glow of my flashlight, I discovered the mask displayed in a neglected shrine, its features at once elegant and terrifying. The eyes were deep, almost lifelike, and the carved expressions bore the unmistakable mark of sorrow and wrath, as though the spirit trapped within yearned for release or revenge. In that moment, as I reached out with trembling fingers to document the mask for my channel, I felt a sudden, overwhelming presence, a cold whisper that seemed to emanate from the mask itself, murmuring words in an ancient dialect that I could barely comprehend. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of my overactive imagination, a byproduct of the eerie isolation and the weight of centuries of superstition that hung in the air. But as I left the temple and journeyed back to my modest lodgings in a nearby village, the whispers grew louder, infiltrating my dreams and echoing in the silent corridors of my mind. Night after night, my sleep was haunted by visions of a spectral woman clad in tattered garments, her eyes burning with fury and sadness, reaching out for something lost, her voice a mournful dirge that repeated the phrase, "Return what is ours," over and over, as if urging me to right a terrible wrong. Each morning, I awoke with the sense that I was being watched, as if the spirit of the betrayed guardian of the mask had followed me, determined to reclaim her stolen relic. Desperate to understand the curse, I scoured local archives and ancient texts in the village's crumbling library, where I uncovered fragmented legends passed down through generations, tales of a beautiful noblewoman who had been dishonored and sacrificed by those she loved, her spirit condemned to eternal unrest, and it was said that the mask, crafted in her image, held the power to channel her wrath against any who dared disturb her final resting place. The more I learned, the more the boundary between scholarly inquiry and personal terror blurred, until I found myself consumed by a need to document every unsettling occurrence, every inexplicable shift in my perception. I began recording my experiences on my channel, my voice barely steady as I recounted the strange phenomenon, objects in my room moving on their own, fleeting shadows that seemed to mimic the mask's features, and a constant feeling of icy dread that clung to me like a second skin. One particularly stormy night, when torrential rain battered my window and the wind howled like the anguished cries of the damned, I sat alone before my camera in my cramped, darkened room, reviewing the footage I had captured. As I watched, the lens caught a moment that defied explanation, a brief, almost subliminal glimpse of a figure in traditional robes standing behind me, her face obscured by the darkness, yet her eyes shone with an intensity that sent a chill down my spine. In that moment, I realized that the mask's curse was not confined to the temple from which it had been taken. It had followed me, infiltrating my very life and binding me to a destiny of perpetual dread. My investigations led me to a reclusive expert in ancient curses, a wizened scholar whose knowledge of No theater and its supernatural lore was rivaled only by the torment evident in his haunted gaze. In his cramped study, filled with brittle scrolls and archaic manuscripts, he explained that the demon mask of No was not merely an artifact, but a conduit for a spirit of vengeance, a spirit that had been bound to the mask by a ritual of sorrow and betrayal. He recounted how, centuries ago, the noblewoman's honor had been defiled by conspirators, and in her anguish she had invoked a curse that would forever condemn her to roam the border between the living and the dead, her fury manifesting in the mask that bore her visage. His words were a grim litany of warnings. Once you gaze upon the demon mask, its curse sears into your soul. It demands restitution, a return to the sanctity of its origin, or it will drag you into an endless cycle of torment. I listened, horrified, as he described how previous owners of the mask had met tragic ends, unsolved disappearances, inexplicable madness, and deaths that bore the unmistakable signature of an ancient, vengeful power. Despite his dire counsel, I found myself irresistibly drawn to the mask's tragic allure, its beauty and horror intertwined in a way that promised forbidden knowledge and unimaginable power. In the days that followed, my life unraveled in subtle, insidious ways. I began to notice that mirrors in my apartment would reflect a flicker of movement, a silhouette in traditional garments that vanished when I turned to look directly. Doors creaked open on their own, and at night, the sound of soft, mournful chanting seeped through the walls, as if an unseen chorus recited lamentations from a distant past. I felt increasingly isolated, as friends and colleagues began to whisper about my sudden, unexplained withdrawal, and I found solace only in the cold, unyielding glow of my camera, which became both my confidant and my chronicler. I returned to the temple several times, each visit more harrowing than the last. With every step I took on the creaking wooden floorboards, I sensed that I was trespassing not only on sacred ground, but on the fragile boundary between the earthly and the spectral. The mask, now encased in a glass reliquary, seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, its features shifting imperceptibly, as if responding to my very thoughts. During one such visit, as twilight bled into night, and the ancient temple was bathed in an eerie, silver light, I heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the deserted halls, a slow, measured tread that matched the rhythm of a distant drum. I followed the sound to a hidden alcove behind a collapsed wall, where I discovered a set of intricately carved stone steps leading down into a subterranean chamber. There, in the flickering light of a lone lantern, I saw a mural depicting the very legend I had been studying. The noble woman, her face twisted in sorrow and fury, holding aloft a mask identical to the one I now carried with me, a symbol of eternal retribution. As I stared, transfixed, the air around me thickened, and I felt an overwhelming presence, as if the spirit of the betrayed woman had stepped out of the ancient mural and into the realm of the living. A soft, sorrowful chant filled the chamber, resonating with the weight of countless years of injustice, and I knew in that moment that the curse was calling me back, demanding that I restore the sacred relic to its rightful place. Torn between the need to unlock the secrets of the mask and the terror of the curse that had already claimed so much of my sanity, I began a desperate search for a way to break the unholy bond. I experimented with ancient rituals, recited incantations in the dead of night, and sought guidance from every scrap of lore I could uncover. Each attempt, however, seemed only to deepen the curse's hold. My dreams became a ceaseless barrage of nightmares, in which the noblewoman's sorrowful eyes burned into my soul, and the mask appeared on every surface, its presence a constant, oppressive reminder of my transgression. One bleak evening, as the wind rattled the windows of my apartment and rain pounded like the relentless beat of a funeral march, I sat before my camera in a final, anguished confession. The room was shrouded in darkness save for the flickering light of a solitary candle, and my voice trembled as I recounted the endless nights of torment, the spectral apparitions, and the creeping madness that threatened to consume me. In a moment of heart-wrenching clarity, I realized that the only way to end the curse was to return the mask to the depths of the tomb from which it had been taken, to restore the ancient seal that once contained the noblewoman's wrath. Yet even as I resolved to embark on that perilous journey, the forces of the curse conspired against me, a series of inexplicable accidents and ominous warnings that made it clear I was not the only one who had suffered for disturbing an age-old secret. Strangers on the street spoke in hushed tones of tragedies that befell those who dared meddle with the cursed relic, and I began receiving cryptic messages, written in a blend of modern text and archaic calligraphy, urging me to desist or face a fate worse than oblivion. With each passing day, the curse tightened its grip on my life, blurring the boundaries between my waking moments and the relentless nightmares that haunted my sleep. I ventured back to the temple one final time, carrying the mask in a carefully wrapped case, my heart a maelstrom of dread and determination. In the silent, foreboding corridors of the abandoned theater, I placed a mask on the ancient altar beneath a mural depicting the tragic scene of its origin, and as I did so, a fierce, otherworldly wind erupted, scattering dust and debris in a frenzied dance, and the whispers that had tormented me for so long swelled into a deafening roar. In that cataclysmic moment, I felt the spirit of the betrayed noblewoman surge forth, a torrent of sorrow and retribution that enveloped me in a blinding flash of light and searing pain. When the light subsided and silence reclaimed the space, I found myself alone. The mask returned to its resting place, yet the cost was etched deeply into my soul. I was left with haunting memories and a permanent scar of guilt and terror, a reminder that some secrets, once unearthed, can never truly be laid to rest. Now, as I document these harrowing events with a trembling hand and a heart heavy with remorse on my YouTube channel, I remain forever changed by the curse of the demon mask of No, a legacy of pain, vengeance, and unyielding sorrow that has become an inescapable part of my existence. And so, I leave you with this final, shattering question. Have you ever dared to disturb an ancient relic, only to find that the shadows of the past reach out with relentless fury, binding your fate to a curse that transcends time and defies the very boundaries of life and death?